Hi there and welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. I'm IceMan and today we are going to be taking a look at the recently released Update 3.0 highlights. So this was released about 8 hours ago or so. And yeah, so let's dive into it, shall we? So basically it's the announcement of the Doom Tower and we'll go through it step by step. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive. This will be a long video, I do apologise, but try and stick with me. We'll cover some of the salient points early on and then we'll take more of a deeper look into it. So the overall basics is obviously there's 132 stages, 108 common floors, 12 boss floors and 12 secret rooms to fight through. There's a hard mode and a normal mode and it resets every 30 days. That's the basics of it. So also when it does reset, the bosses are going to move position and possibly secret rooms, and I'm guessing they might even change some of the requirements for the secret rooms at some point to keep things interesting, because it seems a bit weird that say you'd always need Bannerlords or always need rares. I'm guessing they'll change that around to be sometimes you might need just epics, or you might need different factions at least, certainly, but you know, we'll see on that one. It just seems a bit odd otherwise. So you need the gold key and the silver keys. They each work slightly differently. The quick rundown version here is obviously you get something like 10 of these a day. Work your way through them. They can't be bought anywhere else, but you can get some as rewards in game. I'm guessing they may add them to the daily quests or something like that. And also for rewards in events and stuff, maybe. You know, we'll see how it goes. We've got a breakdown on the new sets to come out, and also a breakdown on the rework of the old sets that they're doing. We also have some new champions to take a look at. Obviously that's why this will take slightly longer. And you got the artifact rebalancing, and there we are at the bottom. So let's go take a proper look at it. Please bear with me, obviously there's a lot to go through here. So we covered the amount of stages, the reset. Gold keys and silver keys will be added to the game at the same time the Doom Tower goes live. Well, that kind of makes sense. Gold keys will be required to access a floor for the first time. Each floor, by the looks of this, will be each line. So you'll have, say, a floor which will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rooms, followed by a boss room with a secret room up here, I'm guessing. And then another floor, then another floor, and so on and up it goes. Gold keys let you access a floor for the first time. Silver keys will let you access secret rooms or replay boss floors you have previously completed. In both cases, the key will only be subtracted from your total if you successfully complete the secret room. So this is basically the same as what they've done with the faction war keys. You don't lose it if you fail, only once you've used it and succeeded. Also means if you crash out, whatever else, you get it back, you know, so that's good news. The Doom Tower floors follow a classic scheme. The champions fight through 3 rounds of enemies, while every 10th floor will feature a boss fight. These bosses will be different and their power will scale with the difficulty you've chosen, and your progress on the boss on floor 10 will be much tougher than the boss on... Oh, sorry. The boss on floor 110 will be much tougher than the boss on floor 10. Well, that makes sense. Secret rooms will pose additional challenges, and we've seen in other videos and whatnot that what those additional challenges are, such as faction, type of champions, rarity, that sort of thing. So you may have to do a floor with a secret room with all support champions, or attack champions, or defense champions, all of one faction, all of one rarity, you know. Keep going. So let's go take a look at the rewards. Completing a floor for the first time will earn you a set reward that cannot be farmed again before the Doom Tower is reset after 30 days. Beating the boss floors will reward you with materials for the Artifact Forge, and each boss will reward materials for a specific set. So each boss gives materials for one of these sets. So you've got the Fatal set, obtained from Koldath the Magma Dragon. It's a 2 artifact per set grouping, with 15% attack and 5% crit rate. That's pretty cool, especially if you need that boost in crit. Just trying to think what, I mean, to be fair, I personally, that's a great one if you only need a little bit of amount of crit, like, you know, you're 5 shy of something of your 100, and then you can boost your attack more and get that. Obviously, if you're really in need of the crit because you're going with crit damage gloves, I'd say you're better off with a crit set or the divine crit set, but you know, it's going to have its place in the game, it's still going to be useful, but I don't think it's going to be quite as epic as they make it sound. Some of this stuff does sound pretty interesting. So the next one is Untouchable, obtained from Borgoth the Scarab King. 4 sets per set, resistance by 40 and immunity for 2 turns. Can't say I'm a huge fan. And then we've got Affinity Breaker, obtained from Angreth the Nether Spider. 4 sets, again, 4 pieces per set. Crit damage plus 30, 20% chance to deal a critical hit instead of a weak hit. So that's kind of cool. If it's not going to work in every scenario, but you know, you can put this on attack champions, and rather than getting weak hits, they've still got a chance to get that crit hit, and it's going to help on affinity bosses for the clan boss and stuff like that as well. Give you that little bit more chance to do a bit more damage rather than losing quite so much and having to always swap champions out. Not amazing, but I think it's going to have its places. The fact that it's a 4-piece set, obviously I'd rather get the 20 from, say, a normal crit damage set and stack that and not worry so much about that. But hey. Then we've got a Frostbite set, obtained from Sorath the Frost Spider. 2 artifact set, 15% chance to resist freeze, has a 10% chance to place a freeze debuff on the attacker. Chances increase 30, 45 and 20, 30 respectively, with more artifacts from the set being equipped. So obviously if you've got 2, you're only going to get the 10 and 25. If you've got 4 pieces, you're going to get the 25, 20 and 30. If you've got a full 6 pieces, you're going to get the 30, 45. So it's kind of cool, and it gives you more frost resistance, so that could be useful in arena for Torment and the like. Make it less likely they can freeze you up. And since it's always got that chance to proc, unlike say something like immunity or whatever that only lasts for a couple of turns, it gives you that little bit more length of thing. So right, let's go through the champions. These are the champions who can be collected from the Doom Tower. They won't be available anywhere else in the game. They're not going to drop from shards. You only get their shards from doing the Doom Tower. First up, Thea the Tomb Angel is a legendary Force attack-based champion from the Knight Revenant faction. First attack Befalman Ascended, attacks 2 times at random and has a 75% chance of placing a Hex debuff. That's the same one that the Minotaur places, by the way. For 5 turns, this debuff cannot be resisted. It's gone there for a good long time, so 5 turns is quite cool. And this is on array 1, don't forget, so especially pair her with counter-attack champions. She's going to be able to get more of these hexes out there. This debuff cannot be resisted. Each critical hit decreases the cooldown of the Not in This World skill by 1 turn. So when you get a crit with this, it's also then going to reduce the cooldown on array 3, which will jump straight to since it affects directly that. So Not of This World places a perfect veil on this champion for 3 turns, grants an extra turn. It's on a 6-turn cooldown. I'm guessing it won't be able to be booked because you're reducing cooldown with this ability. But for every crit you get, and bearing in mind it attacks twice, and it says each critical hit. So just in one go, if you manage to crit both times, you've reduced the cooldown by 2 to 4, from 6 to 4 on array 3. You pair her with a counter-attack champion or ally attack champion and she's getting extra hits, you're going to be able to really bring this down quickly and keep that perfect veil up quite a lot. Array 2, Hex Reaper attacks all enemies, damage increases by 50% for each Hex debuff on the enemy team, stacks up to 300%. Wow. Removes all Hex debuffs from all enemies after attacking. So obviously it's going to remove it, and it's on a 6-turn cooldown. It's a long turn cooldown. It may be able to book down, we'll see what happens. But it sounds pretty cool, and I think, you know, you pair her with the right champions. Although there's no other champions out in the game that place Hex, you place her with a counter-attack champion, you place her with those ally attack champions, I think you're going to get more of these out there than you think. Alright, it's 2 times at random, so there's a chance that it's not going to work the way you want, but, you know, pairing her with the right champions is still going to give her a better chance. You also put her in a Relentless set, giving her even more chances, or her own counter-attack set, so that, you know, on a counter-attack she can proc a counter-attack and so on. You know, I think she'll be a really interesting champion. I really can't wait to see what she does. Then we've got Gomlock Skyhide, a legendary force support with the Orc faction. He's A1, Soul Suck Tendrils, attacks 1 enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a Leech debuff for 2 turns, has a 50% chance of placing a Leech debuff for 2 turns on 2 random enemies if this champion has full HP. So it'll automatically do it on 1 enemy for 2 turns. And then if he's at full HP, he has a chance of placing it on 2 random enemies. I'm guessing on top of that, so he could technically do 3 of the team, which is pretty cool. Fateful Trickster is A2, attacks 1 enemy, has a 60% chance of stealing 2 random buffs from the target, also has a 60% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 50%. Steals 50% of the target's max turn meter instead if this champion has full HP. On a 4-turn cooldown. Now this sounds pretty cool. Is A3, Wild Surge, attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. The first hit on each target also has a 75% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter. The second hit on each target also has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken for 2 turns if this champion has full HP. This is somebody you're really going to want to pair with somebody who heals a lot and can keep him at full health, and he'll get a lot more benefit from that. Pairing with shield champions, so his shield's going down, like his health and stuff, and he'll do a lot more work for you. But as decreased champions go, he'll be pretty cool. It's a bit... As decreased champions go, it's a bit of a shame that there's this qualifier on it, but, you know. Then he's got a passive, Enchanter. Whenever 4 or more buffs are placed on the enemy team in a single turn, places a shield buff on this champion that equal to 15% of this champion's max HP. So, you know, I'm guessing he's probably going to be HP based. And a great candidate for the, say, a shield set anyway. So, you know, he does sound pretty cool. Then we've got Rost the Soul Cage, Legendary Void Champion, HP based, Demon Spawn. Is A1 Jagged Knuckles, attacks one enemy, places a shield buff on this champion equal to 10% of the champion's max HP. The shield's value increases by 1% for each poison debuff on the target. So he's obviously going to get more benefit out of this paired with, and he's probably going to place poisons himself, I'm guessing anyway, but you know, you pair him with poisoners, he's going to get even more shield and stuff, so you know, this will be pretty cool. Then he's got Fetid Eruption, attacks all enemies, has 75% chance of decreasing the turn meters by 15% of enemies under one or more poison debuffs. Also has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns on enemies under 2 or more poison debuffs. Has a 75% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn on enemies under 3 or more poison debuffs. Instantly activates this skill when this champion is revived by Elemental Conjurer. Alright, so he pairs with Elemental Conjurer by the sounds of it then. That's pretty cool. We'll see how things go, you know. And I'm guessing you might be able to book these up to 100% and stuff, so we'll see when he comes out like, and we get to deep dive into him properly. Then we've got Soul Bounty, places a 25% strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns and a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, so that's pretty cool. Then he's got a passive, Call of the Cage. When attacked, has a 50% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. Whenever an ally is attacked while under a strengthen buff, has a 50% chance of placing a provoke debuff on the attacker for 1 turn. Increases his champion's max HP by 5% whenever an enemy receives damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion. Whenever an enemy receives damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion, also decreases their max HP by 5%. It cannot decrease a single champion's max HP by more than 25% in one battle. Will not decrease bosses' max HP and cannot increase this champion's max HP by more than 50%. He's got an aura that increases ally resistance in all battles by 80. Update. Okay, apparently this champion is actually going to be in the Undead Hordes because we need more Undead Legendaries, of course. They really don't get it, do they? So far, not a single Dwarf, not a single Lizard Man, you know, I mean, these factions that are really crying out for champions and they're adding them to the ones that are already absolutely swamped. Plarium, get a clue, please. Right, anyway, so let's read the update for this one first. After the patch release, the name of this champion will be Archmage Helmet. I must admit, I kind of prefer Royal Archmage, to be honest, but you know. Anyway, he is an epic champion, magic affinity, support champion with the Bannerlords. Again, not a dwarf. Or a lizardman. It's A1, Arcane Dynamo, attacks one enemy, fills this champion's turn meter by 10%, fills the turn meter by 20% if this attack is critical, so that's pretty cool. Is a 2 time slip, attacks one enemy, also attacks all other enemies if the first attack is critical. So you're going to build him out with full crit, and you know he's likely to get attack all enemies, so that's quite cool. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. That can probably be booked up, I'm guessing. After attacking, decreases the turn meters of each enemy without a stun debuff by 20%. So if he doesn't stun, he's going to decrease turn meter. Either way, it's good, you know. Then we've got Psychic Guidance is A3, places a 30% increased speed buff, a 30% increased crit rate buff, and a 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. I'm not a big fan of the crit rate buff myself, because obviously, unless a champion is so integral that they're always going to be on a team, you build all your champions for 100% crit rate anyway, because you can't count on this. So it's kind of a wasted buff, to be honest. But increased speed and increased crit damage, I'll take it, you know, that's not bad. Then he's got a passive, Chrono Isolation, which makes him immune to turn meter decrease in effects. That's pretty cool. He's got an aura, increases ally speed in the arena battles by 17%. So I think that's either on par or a little bit higher than... No, cut this out. Doesn't matter who's higher than that. Right, next up, let's check his update. After the patch release, the name of this champion will be Akoth the Seared. That is kind of cool, actually. Epic champion, magic, affinity, defense based, with the demon spawn. Because again, demon spawns don't have enough champions and rares, do they? And epics and legendaries and... Oh well. Right, so A1, Molten Punch, attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 30% decreased crit rate. Debuff for 2 turns. Decreased crit rate. We've seen this before. Don't know if we have. Now that's quite cool. And that would actually make increased crit rate buffs viable in the game. Because if you start bringing in champions that decrease crit rate, the increased crit rate can counter it, meaning you've still got your 100% crit rate. So that is actually a good move. That is actually a very intelligent move by Plarium. It means that those increased crit rates will finally actually have some real value. His A2 Pyroclasm attacks all enemies, has a 20% chance of placing a HP burn debuff for 2 turns. The chance of placing the debuff increases by 20% for each enemy alive. I have to say, this makes him sound a bit like a Spider Champ. HB increases the chance of placing the debuff by 20% for each enemy alive. You know, all those spiderlings. Yeah, it definitely sounds very directed there. Then we've got Pyretic Release. Attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of increasing the cooldowns of all skills by 2 turns on enemies under HP burn. Debuff also places a shield buff equal to 20% of this champion's max HP on all allies for 2 turns. Definitely a spider champ, and a very good one by the sounds of it. He's going to be able to possibly replace Miscreated Monster if you build him with high HP, even though he's a defense based champion. Depending on what his HP stat is, you'll be able to get the shields out there and the HP burns out of him, so that'll be quite cool. We'll have to see how it works. Instantly activates his skill when this champion is revived by Elemental Conjurer. So it sounds like he's designed to be used with that Elemental Conjurer, and I suppose somebody else was as well. His A4, oh no, his passive, Fiery Swath, has a 10% chance of placing a fear debuff on an enemy for 1 turn whenever they receive damage from a HP burn. So he's going to be putting out fears on the likes of spiders and stuff as well. That's pretty cool. And then he's got an aura that increases ally HP in all battles by 25%. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a rather good spider champ, I'd have to say. Elemental Conjurer. Update. After the patch release, the name of this champion will be Rian the Conjurer. Okay. She's an epic force affinity support champion with the Dark Elves. Another faction that's not exactly lacking for champions. They've got plenty of epics. Dwarfs, Lizardmen, Plarium, get the clue. Right, A1 Magnum Ball attacks one enemy, has 50% chance of placing block debuffs for 2 turns. That's cool. Then we've got Sweeping Dismissal, has a 75% chance of removing all buffs from all enemies. Also has a 75% chance of placing 25% weaken on all enemies for 2 turns. That's quite cool. Then we've got Master of Summons, revives a dead ally with 50% HP, then fills their turn meter by 50%. Will also then place a block debuff buff on them for 2 turns. This kind of sounds like she's almost supposed to be paired with some of those other champs to work well in Spider. you know, brings them up, puts the block debuff so they can't get the poisons once she brings them back, and increases their turn meter to help get them going again. So again, this is talking about the people she can revive. We'll also revive the Inferno Golem, that's not called that. Eros the Soul Cage, also not called that, with a 30% HP. Oh wait a minute, let's read this properly. We'll also revive these two with 30% HP when they're on the same team and not the target of the skill. So you need to be reviving somebody else, maybe a third person, to revive them, or a second person and it will revive them, but they can't be targeted. We'll then also fill their turn meters by 30% after reviving. So it's kind of cool that it's designed to work with these other champions, makes them sort of a team that will work together nicely. If either Inferno Golem or Eros the Soul Cage are the target of the skill, the champion will be revived with 50% HP and 50% turn meter and a block debuff buff for 2 turns. Yeah, so basically if you mess up or you use it when it's only them down, they're only going to get the basic, by the sounds of that. As an aura that increases ally accuracy in all battles by 40. Every player who has completed floor 10 will get a placement in the Doom Tower rankings. These are separated into the following categories: global and clan. The rankings are further divided by difficulty, normal and hard. Completing Doom Tower floors will award ranking points and increase your standing, much like what you see in tournaments. When the Doom Tower resets, the game will display a pop-up with the current rankings to highlight the most successful players. I wouldn't be surprised if you get some bonus rewards for being higher up in those rankings too. I guess it's a way of trying to get clans to work together to encourage each other to do the Doom Tower so that you can all progress together and get better rewards. Now, apparently this one may well be the Christmas fusion, but there's nothing here about that, and I've not come across that, so I'm not going to state that right now, just that it's a possibility. And we've got, I'm not even going to try pronouncing this one, Pinexial, something like that. Legendary Magic Champion support with the High Elves, another champion that's really lacking in legendaries, of course. Array 1, Mistress of Glamours, attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a Veil buff on a random ally for 1 turn, cannot place the Veil buff on this champion. Array 2, Grip of Winter, places a 60% increased defense and a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies under freeze debuffs, places a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns on all enemies under freeze debuffs on a 5-turn cooldown. Then we've got Icicle Barrage, attacks 5 times at random. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Has a 100% chance of placing a freeze debuff on enemies that receive 2 hits. Interesting, very RNG based. I'm not a big fan of RNG based champions, but you know, we'll see what she's like. She's got a passive Frostweaver. Whenever an enemy places a freeze debuff on an ally, has a 20% chance of stealing the freeze debuff and placing it on this champion instead. Has a 25% chance of filling this champion's turn meter by 25% every time they receive a freeze debuff. Has a 35% chance of removing any freeze debuffs from this champion at the start of every turn. So she's kind of a bit of a Torment counter, really. If there are multiple champions in this team with this skill, only one will activate. So you can't load her up to really try and take Torment out of the game. Then she's got an aura that increases all resistance in battles by 80. Then we've got Yakal the Scourge. He's a legendary void attack based champion from the Barbarians faction. Now I'll admit Barbarians are not overloaded with legendaries. but they're still not as dire as the dwarves or the lizardmen. Axe of All Winter attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 20% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Will ignore shield buffs if there are 1 or more enemies under freeze debuffs. Will also ignore block damage buffs if there are 2 or more enemies under freeze debuffs. Will also ignore 30% of the target's defense if there are 3 or more enemies under freeze debuffs. So he's kind of cool. Blizzard Rider attacks one enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed for 3 turns, and a 75% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Also steals 100% of the target's turn meter and places 30% increased speed buff on this champion for 3 turns. Notice it says steals 100% of the target's turn meter. So if the target's turn meter is nearly at 100, he's going to basically nearly get another go and then boost his own speed as well. So that's pretty cool. Then he's A3 Glaciate, attacks one enemy 3 times. If the target is under a freeze debuff, removes the debuff after attacking and places it on all enemies except the initial target. Will also attack all enemies except the initial target after the 3rd hit. Interesting. So he's going to do 3 hits on 1 person. And if he's targeting somebody who's already under a freeze, he will remove that freeze, spread it out to the other 3 so that they will get it. And he's going to hit all of them after he's done the 3 hits on this guy. That's kind of cool. I like where the thought process was at with this one. Then we've got Lord of Ice passive. Decreases the damage this champion receives by 10% and increases the damage this champion inflicts by 10% if there are 1 or more enemies under freeze debuffs. Increases this champion's speed by 15 and resistance by 50 if there are 2 or more enemies under freeze. And then he's got active effect. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 2 turns whenever there are 3 enemies under freeze debuffs. So if he manages to land and spread all those things, he's going to get an unkillable. Increases ally attack in the Doom Tower by 43%. Now, I have to say I really like this champion. And obviously with it all being frosty, he may well be the Winter Fusion, but we'll see. Although this one's wintry too, it may just be that one of them will come out around that time. So next up, I do apologise, I know it's a long video, we're going to try and edit it down a little bit here and there, but I did warn you, we're taking a deep dive. We've got Achak the Wenderin, epic force-based support champion who's with the Demon Spawn. Devour All Hope attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of decreasing the duration of one random buff if the target is under HP burn. Also has a 30% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15% if they are under a freeze. Cannibal Might places a block debuff buff on all allies for 1 turn and a 25% strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns. Frostfire Gale attacks all enemies, has a 70% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn on enemies whose attack is higher than their defense. Has a 70% chance of placing a HP burn debuff for 1 turn on enemies whose defense is equal to or higher than their attack. Both of these are on a 5-turn cooldown. It is passive, Twisted Hunger. Heals all allies by 5% of their max HP every time an enemy under HP burn debuff gets a turn. So they take damage, they're going to heal your team by 5%. Fills the turn meters of all allies by 10% every time an enemy under freeze debuff gets a turn. So yeah, that's kind of cool. An aura that increases defense in all battles by 25%. And then we've got our next one, Grunch Killjoy, an epic force champion who's a support champion with the Ogre tribes. His A1 Mace of Foulness attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance of placing a block debuff for 1 turn. His A2 Kindle Soulfire attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a bomb debuff that detonates after 1 turn. Hex Eater removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a 15% continuous heal buff for 1 turn on each ally for every debuff removed from them. So that's quite cool. His passive Madcap heals the turn meters of all allies by 10% whenever a bomb debuff detonates on the enemy. And then he's got an aura that increases ally defense in faction wars by 30%. The artifact rebalance that we've been looking at. So 8 artifacts to go through here. This is going to take a little while. I do apologise, but you know, I did warn you it'd be a long video. So the retaliation set is going to give you a chance to counter attack when hit at 35%, up from 25%. Regeneration, a 4-set piece, heals by 15%, up from 10 every turn. Poison set goes up, gives you a 75% chance instead of 50% chance, placing a 2.5% poison debuff for 2 turns. The reflex set has a 40% chance, up from 30, to reduce random skill cooldown by 1 turn. Avenging set has a 45%, up from 30% chance to counter attack when hit with a critical hit. Has no damage penalty. Then we've got the Destroy set, decreases enemy max HP by 40%, up from 30% of damage dealt. Cursed set, 70% chance, up from 50, chance to place a 50% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns, up from 1 turn. To be fair, some of these sets are just bad anyway. I think some of these changes will maybe get people to use them more, but not a hell of a lot more. I still think that the ones that we tend to stick with are going to be the ones we still tend to stick with for the same reasons we already do. Not in all cases, it will make some of these a bit more viable, but you know. Curing, one of the worst sets in the game under my opinion. It's a 4-set piece, 20% up from 10%, bonus heal. Yeah, I'll never wear that. Miscellaneous, the Christmas decorations return to the Bastion, meet the holiday season in style. Many faction war stages went through balance tweaks and should be easier to complete. This is already in effect. So there we have it, guys. All big changes, all coming into the game very soon. I know we're all excited, I know I am. And if you stuck with me this long, I very much appreciate it. Thank you for watching to this point. If you enjoyed the video, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe for the notifications on next videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.